Hello and welcome to the RTE Soccer Podcast Daily World Cup edition. Mikey, Stafford joined by John, Brewin and Conor, Neville to sift over the ashes of the day when the dream died for the two teams from the Far East. Japan really impressed in going down on penalties to 2018 finalist Croatia. South Korea, you could say, really surprised in how they just lay down and welcomed on Brazil, who scored 4 goals in the first half and won 4-1, won easily. John, have we seen the performance of the 2022 World Cup champions there this evening, do you think?
I'm not sure about that because I think we've seen these performances before from Brazil. They're very good at the old flat track bully. And the flat track was offered to them, it has to be said, by the Koreans. I'm not sure there was much examination of how good they are. But having said that, obviously the attacking flair's there, and the goal from Richarlison in particular, I think when Thiago Silva steps forward and plays the pass through, you're looking at your total football models. That's going to be well, should the youth of today have such a thing as 101 great goals? That's the type of thing that would have feature in it, because it was delightful stuff. But Brazil look good. Over here in the UK, we have the benefit of Roy Keane's analysis, and I tend to agree with him that they were a little bit satisfied with themselves. I think the dancing, the jig, was the word he used for it. I'm not sure. I mean, the thing is, if that was the Premier League that Roy Keane played in, and someone did that in the first half, then half of the Brazilian team would not be playing next week because it had taken a right hammering off the opposition. But the Koreans are very respectful in a way that I was quite surprised by, and the Koreans pretty much let them win. Listen, Brazil remain the favourites with good reason. I'm not sure what was put in front of them tonight.
Yeah, Conor, here in Ireland, we have the benefit of Didi Hamann, who kind of seemed to agree with Roy Keane, and it comes down on the side of the adults in Footloose when it comes to dancing.
Fine reference there. Fine reference. I'm not. It's a bit before my time, possibly. But yeah, what's not before my time, by the way, is 101 great goals. I did actually have one of those cassettes back in the mid '90s. In my one, there were actual penalties in it, so I'm not sure how great some of the goals were. Didi had much the same anxieties as Roy Keane. I mean, I suppose he comes from the similar era, and yeah, he was. The narrative, I think, is being written that Brazil's overconfidence now is going to cost them down the line. Didi said something along the lines of, we'll see if you're dancing in 2 weeks type thing. And
yeah,
that is kind of the narrative that's been spun, that they overdosed a bit in the first half. I thought they still could have added more goals in the second half. I mean, Rafinha had a great chance. Danny Alves at the end had a spectacular attempt. But yeah, they seemed a bit self-satisfied. The manager getting involved in the jig was obviously, that was more that incited more angry comment. I think angry comment more than anything. Yeah, I suspect I tend to agree with John that this is the type of game they really flourish in, and we don't, where Brazil have stumbled in the last few World Cups have been up against European opposition when they've really had their feet put to the fire, and can they respond? And I'm not sure in the first half you were minded to get carried away, but on reflection, I'm not sure we learned too much. We have seen this before.
Yeah, it is, John. It's all going quite comfortably for them, I suppose. As Conor says, the feet definitely out to the fire, and they brought on their third choice goalkeeper, Weverton. I'm not gonna.
Great name.
Yes, he came on. So they're the first team in history to use their all 26 players in their squad, which is a nice bit of history, but it speaks to Conor's point that they haven't exactly been stress tested.
No, I think actually France can do that if they bring on Alphonse Areola, but that would obviously mean them being about 4-0 up against England. So as a proud patriot, not really, I don't want to see that. But yes, it has been. I mean, look, remember they did lose a group game. They lost a game to Cameroon. It's not been totally plain sailing for them. They've had their injuries. I'm not sure they'd be missing Alex Telles, having watched him play at Old Trafford, but I think Gabriel Jesus is a type of player that you'd miss. He offers a different dimension. And actually, it wasn't really at the centre. I mean, he obviously scored a penalty. Neymar, I'm still not sure. I mean, is anyone sure about Neymar? I mean, that's the whole point of Neymar, right? It's that we don't. I mean, how long have we been talking about Neymar? Since about 2010, 2011, something like that. And we still haven't got to the bottom of Neymar. And it is suggested that our final chance to get to the bottom of Neymar, I don't think... Did they play better because he was in the team? I'm not even sure I know the answer to that question.
They're playing him as according to the FIFA team graphics, he's playing as the third man in a 3-man midfield. Like, what kind of twisted? Yeah, if you look at the official graphic, Neymar is down as like he's playing in the midfield alongside Casemiro, and I got out of my head, but yeah, he's one of the 3 in midfield according to their according to the graphic, which is obviously a nonsense.
Yes.
He's clearly not a midfielder, but maybe this is how he's styling himself. I personally don't like, what is Neymar? I think Conor is a fair question, and the one that maybe there's many answers to.
At the beginning of his career, he seemed to be anointed to join the Messi, Ronaldo sort of that class of player. He was kind of the third leg of that or whatever, and hasn't really happened. He never really did anything to justify that standing, I don't think, and his subsequent career hasn't either. No, he has been a very good player. I heard a stat there that he's the 3rd Brazilian to score in 3 World Cups. No, I was surprised at that, but yeah, so he like obviously an excellent forward, but he's never justified early hype, and I suppose that's why the narrative about him is so negative the whole time, because he was supposed to be that. If he had a different start to his career and was assessed more accurately, maybe we wouldn't look at him in that light, I sometimes think. But he's played in a frustrating Brazilian era as well, you know.
Yeah, I think he's carried them before, but I think it's also almost at the point, if they win this World Cup with Neymar and the team, I don't think that transfers him over to the greatness that was bestowed on him at the start of his career. It's always been, well, he was a good player and he won the World Cup. Should he arrive at that? I just don't get it. I mean, I've seen him play several times. I saw him play in 2014 for Brazil, where he did carry them until he got that injury. And I've seen him play for PSG and Barcelona. The talent's there, but the echelon you placed him in there, Conor, he's not in.
Well, I didn't place him in there. I said
you said that. Yes, of course. No, yes, but the one that he was headed for was the idea. He's never got there, has he? And the other player of this World Cup is Kylian Mbappe. Now, it's not really much of a contest between those two club colleagues when it comes to this World Cup. Yeah, Neymar is a great imponderable, and I don't know. He's good at the dancing. That appears to be what he's there for.
I think you're being kind there. Basically, that first dance, which seems to have raged everyone, was basically a Macarena, as far as I could see. I, Conor, for one, hold the Brazilians to higher standards than a Macarena when it comes to a goal celebration.
Are you a scholar of their dancing and celebrations of the past?
Well, the one we all remember,
94.
It's Bebeto's we remember, really, isn't it? And that was pretty simple, like rocking a pretend baby because his wife had just had a baby. I know it wasn't rocket science.
It's all about living up to an image now, isn't it? I mean, it's all we're all doing.
Yeah. Your ditty is showing there, I'm afraid, Conor. So the logic is there on the easier side of the draw, John, which is means maybe the feet won't be held to the fire just yet, because what we saw earlier in the day was quite surprising to most. I did predict a 2-2 draw and Croatia on penalties, so I'm pretty chuffed with myself on that front. But Japan are just a fantastic team, I think, and like I don't think Croatia embarrassed themselves or anything like that.
No. I think Japan. It's sad, isn't it, that it ends at the second round at the same stage that Japan would consider par. But I've they beat Spain, they beat Germany, two amazing matches for which the first round should be recalled for. And then in that game, it felt to me as if they were gonna. In those other games, what's happened is at half time they've just sort of gone from the B of the bang at the second half, and it felt like they went the other way from the start of the first half to try and win the game that way. Now, Croatia are canny operators. Now, if you compare the performance of Croatia at World Cups to, say, Germany, a country not too far away and much bigger, I mean, they continue to punch above their weight. They continue to show the know-how. When it got to the penalty shootout, well, I don't think anyone fancied Japan, really, did they? And I'm not sure why that is, though I do recall from personal experience attending their game against Paraguay in 2010. And that was probably the worst match I've ever been to. But, one of those games where, and I don't condone betting in any way, but I put the bet on 0-0 after about 2 minutes, in running bet, because it was so obvious. And yet it was clear that they feared the penalty and that they feared the penalty shootout so much. And that appeared to be what happened here. And again, Japan stepped up towards the end of that heart at the extra time. And then we got to the penalty shootouts. Minamino takes the first one, and oh dear, we sort of knew what was going to happen from that point on, didn't we?
We certainly did. And fair play to the Croatian goalkeeper, Livkovic, who's still playing at home with Red Star, I think, is he? No, sorry, that would be the wrong country. He's that's a bad mistake to make. I won't.
You're living in the pre 92 dispensation there.
Yeah, we're not going to get it. We're not going to get into that. He is still playing in his home league, and you'd wonder for how long, because one thing that catches an eye, it's a goalkeeper saving 3 penalties in a World Cup knockout game. But on Japan, sorry, I digress. I've actually, while you were talking, I went back into the FIFA football data platform because I didn't want. I had to check. According to FIFA's layout of the Brazil team, they play 3 in midfield, which is Casemiro, Paqueta, and Neymar. And there you go, with Rafinha, Richarlison, and Vinicius Jr. up front. So I think they're being kind in saying that Brazil play a 4-3-3 when really Brazil play a 4-1-5. I think Casemiro is basically the midfield. But yeah, I'm not going mad. I knew that was there. Going back to Japan, Conor, I saw a few people on social media, on Twitter, kind of during the game when it was very much in the balance, kind of saying, just commenting on how the referee seemed to be like a jolly good sort, and he was like refereeing with a certain kind of elan and the kind of laughing and smiling with the players. I actually think this is the Japan effect. I think Japan are so respectful to their opponents, and they're so not easygoing. They desperately want to win, but they certainly have a certain philosophy about the game. I think it impacts on the team they're playing against. And I think having Japan in the tournament,
negative way.
No, in a positive way. I think other teams kind of they don't. I don't know if Brazil would have danced the way they danced against Japan. I'm not sure. Maybe if Japan rolled over after 5 minutes, they probably would have. But Japan seemed to bring the best out in the opposition, as far as I can see.
It's interesting. You're saying Japan are bringing a rugby spirit to the world. What you're suggesting? You're going to have viral clips of Mike Malone's when Japan play. The Japan games have been excellent. Yeah, I mean, for the Spain game, I was kind of watching Germany, Costa Rica, but today's game was very exciting. I wasn't that surprised at all. Japan went ahead. I mean, I had a nose that if there was going to be a surprise in the second round, that might be it. If you could call it a surprise, a very modest surprise if Japan had come out on top, and given they'd already beaten 2 sort of bigger nations. Croatia are very much, I think, there's a kind of survive and advance quality to them. They're digging in. They're just hanging in there. I mean, they could have lost to Belgium. The Lukaku numerous chances at the end. They looked very good against the Canadians when they got into their groove. They were obviously annoyed by something the Canadian manager said, but if it was a fascinating stat I heard that Croatia have never, not since '98, I believe, have they won a knockout game in normal time.
Yeah,
which seems remarkable for a country that's got to a World Cup final in that time, and it shows a kind of deep resilience about them. They're very slick passers. Modric is there. There's a great tradition, and their midfield is superb. But there's a real know-how in these sort of and a doggedness in these tight situations that enables them to get through. I mean, the semi-final 4 years ago is a classic example of that. And they will test Brazil. I mean, you'd imagine Brazil should have enough to beat them, but they're the kind of opposition that could make life awkward for Brazil, I'd say, in a way that South Korea weren't.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably knowing full well that Dynamo Zagreb's Dominik Likovic. Again, the computer,
yes.
Google's really helping me out this evening. Probably even full knowledge that he was going to save their bacon in the shootout. John, the manager, he took off Modric, he took off Perisic.
Yeah, and
ballsy, you might say.
Yeah, I mean,
and Kovacic, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and when we talk about playing Brazil, it's in midfield where, I mean, obviously that's Croatia's strong point. And if they're just going to play Casemiro as a midfielder, they could have problems because Modric and Casemiro obviously club colleagues for many years, but Modric will have the know-how against playing against midfielders of that quality. Again, Lucas Paqueta, who I've seen play for West Ham. Well, I say play, I've seen him on the field, not do much, but I've not got to the bottom of him either. That's where Croatia can cause them problems. Clearly, the coach thought that he thought he was going to win on penalties, which is amazing, great confidence. But of course, Modric is 37. He can't play 120 minutes. If you want to get further, you want to get to the semi-finals, you have to take that risk. Now, I was thinking about this in this country, in England. People still talk about Alf Ramsey taking off Bobby Charlton in 1970 for removing your creative force. Yet they had the balls to do it. They got away with it, and you couldn't say that it'd be well rested. But Croatia are the type of team that could give Brazil a problem. They're going to be a bit more physical than South Korea, that's for sure. And we've seen they have a mastery of the dark arts, and they've got to teams, and also they have that fierce belief that if the game goes into the dark hours, they can get it done because, as Conor said, they have this record of getting that far. Not easy for Brazil. Their overconfidence, they could do with putting that to one side, I suggest.
Yeah. John is completely discounting famed water carrier Neymar there in the middle of the field.
The new Deschamps, yeah.
There's a few Brazilian players that are perplexing us this evening. Neymar. There's a question mark hanging over several of them.
Yeah, but Croatia have that's fascinating. All right, they never won in 90 minutes since 1998, but they just seem like a very clever team. Conor, they kind of not that they know what they need to do to win. Obviously, they wanted to win that match in normal time, but you watch them, like they're very well coached. They have a system and they have excellent players in all the important positions. Even some of them who we might consider at club level are a bit past their best, but they're a good team. Like a few teams at this tournament, they're probably what you might describe as aging a little bit, but so it'll be interesting. They're kind of the old dogs for the hard road versus the all singing, all dancing, no midfield Brazilians.
Yeah, that group they were in with Belgium was really a sort of retirement home. That group, really, wasn't it? I mean, when Japan went ahead, there was a sort of, you kind of got the sense of almost of destiny about this. This is going to be one of those remarkable runs akin to South Korea in 2000. I don't know why I picked that example, but akin to one of these runs that underdogs go on, and Croatia could have feared the worst, but there's a cussedness and a tactical acumen to them. And Modric, I suppose, is key to that. He's so experienced. He never gives the ball away. He's able to sort of take the sting out of games, change the pace of games, and they hang in there. They got their goal. Perisic, who has been very good in most of the games. He got the goal, and they have this cussedness and intelligence about the team. On in terms of pure flamboyance, Brazil would be counting on overwhelming them, but I wouldn't be that confident they'll do it. At the time they've come up against a European nation like that, Belgium 2018, Germany 4, Holland 10, they've been taken out. So looking to against Croatia the next time out. I mean, there's a perception they have the easy side of the draw. I suppose they do compared to what's on the other side, but there's still some scorpions out there on their side.
Absolutely. So looking at the matches tomorrow, John, you're a seasoned watcher of Manchester United. So I just wondered, did you allow yourself a little chuckle or just a little nod of kind of recognition when you saw kind of what Fernando Santos was being asked at the Portugal press conference today, and the answers he was giving? Basically a manager having to, show that they're in control of Cristiano Ronaldo while also trying very hard not to scold him in a press conference for behaving like a child.
I can't actually remember a tournament in which Ronaldo's future was not the main discussion of topic for the manager. I mean, go back to Scolari, who is a fairly punchy old operator, and would have to talk about would Real Madrid buy him this summer, and it's the Ronaldo show. And the funny thing is about this is that Portugal in this World Cup have actually shown that there's a lot more to them than Ronaldo. And Bruno Fernandes has come to the party, been very, very good. And they've got, like everybody, there is the odd creaking of age. Pepe's reappearance always would indicate that. But they're a decent team. And we always wonder, don't we, at this point, would they be a better team without Ronaldo? But we can't have that just yet. And I'm hoping that this is the last World Cup that we have to discuss that. And I'm sure Fernando Santos thinks that, though. Presumably he is reaching the end of his time. But yeah, Portugal are hard to love. And I think that's because of one man, really. And also, actually, having said that, Portugal are, there's this idea, isn't there? The Brazil of Europe, the talent chain out of that, a lot of it is to do actually with the agents involved who are very canny, getting these players across Europe. Seems to be just about every team has a young Portuguese star. And yet they're not that exciting. They have a very conservative style of play. Fernando Santos, makes Roy Hodgson look like Ozzy Ardiles or something. It's a real... You wonder, we English always talk about the handbrake for Gareth Southgate. What would the handbrake be like if they released it for the Portugal team? And I don't know, because I don't think we've ever seen it. This is how they get the job done. This is how they got the job done in 2016. That's the formula. And they're up against Switzerland, who I think are quite decent. But then again, one of these teams, like Japan, like Mexico used to be, the second round is this abyss into which they fall. Yeah.
Two shots on target against Uruguay, Conor, and 2 goals for Portugal. They are incredibly efficient, and when you kind of look at the attacking talent they have, Bruno Fernandes, João Felix, Bernardo Silva, João Cancelo, the most lethal fullback in world football possibly. It does seem slightly like they're playing within themselves, and they're coming up against a Swiss team who I really like Switzerland, because I just think they're actually to the old cliche of being kind of reliably Swiss and 11 Roger Federers. They're actually becoming quite entertaining, and they've got quite a nice style to them, and they've been involved in a couple of chaotic games. So I'm getting on board the Swiss hype train myself.
There was a World Cup some years ago where they managed to get to the second round, I think, with either scoring 1 goal or no goals at all.
2006, yeah. The Joru and Senderos years, yeah.
Was it no goals or was it 1 goal? I can't recall.
I think they went out on penalties 0-0 to Ukraine, didn't they, in the second round?
Yeah. No, they seem. I mean, clearly the Serbia game they were involved with was a humdinger, really.
Yeah.
There was a lot of debate in RT about showing Brazil and Cameroon instead of it, and I think it was centered. The Brazil factor made the decision, and then there was a lot of people asking how you get onto the RT news channel, which I think you have to get to watch Switzerland and Serbia. But yeah, fantastic and very consistent in at least in terms of achievement, not how they've done it. We saw in the Euros the manner in which they overcame France, and that's kind of the sense that France are a bit cavalier, and maybe that'll give England a chance. But yeah, the Swiss definitely they seem to have more potent weapons than they have in the past going forward. Portugal's conservatism, obviously, it stretches back to Euro 2016 when they won the Euros in a very sort of
forgettable is a word you could use.
Forgettable defensive fashion. I mean, and they had blown it famously when they hosted it some years in 2004, I think, and then ended up winning it with a very comparatively humdrum outfit. I think won it in 2016. But they, I mean, and they've continued in that vein. Same manager is still there. They were very dependent on Ronaldo, a bit less so now, obviously, as he's aging. Bruno Fernandes is influential, and of course did score both those goals against Uruguay, I believe. But you say that they were actually quite. The Ghana game they played was actually in the second half was incredibly end to end, and they could have scored, possibly down to the fact that Ghana are so open at the back, and Portugal were able to exploit that every time they went forward. Mm-hmm. So they have that in their locker. Portugal, Switzerland is very hard to call. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily trust Portugal to get it done against a team as consistent as you say as the Swiss are, and who know what they're about as much as the Swiss do. So I'd say that there's a fair chance that could go the distance, possibly into extra time and maybe further.
Yeah, John. The other game, John. I find us talking about Cristiano Ronaldo, and I kind of think how we're talking about Neymar, and how they're kind of perhaps albatrosses almost around the neck of their teams to an extent with their status and with kind of the kind of probably the control they have over a lot of their teammates. And then you look at a couple of other superstars, Mbappe and Messi, who seem to have a slightly more positive kind of relationship with their team. And then I think about the Morocco-Spain game and how you're really looking at, you've really got two teams here, haven't you? You've got like this is a Spain team without a superstar. You'd have to say yes. There's probably there's a couple of embryonic superstars in there, but they're not that yet. And Morocco are a team where arguably their two most famous players are their fullbacks. But this, I think, could be like a real afternoon delight tomorrow. I think this could be a very, very close game. I don't know how you see it.
Yeah, I do think so. And it feels like Africa and also the region, Qatar. I mean, it's not that close, but of that Arabic nation thing from this, and obviously Spain and Morocco are very close to each other, of course, and there is a rivalry there, or there could be beef between the two. And yeah, it's a very good point you make, Mikey, is that these are teams as opposed to a superstar collection like Brazil that we spoke about, or Ronaldo's one-man mission to make himself the only person worth anything in a team of actual megastars. But yeah, and Spain interests me because that game against Japan, which I did watch, there are certain points in matches where they just seem to have the opposition completely and utterly strangled, and then just don't kill them off. and they are relying on Alvaro Morata, who is an excellent player in Spain, yet still I would question his reliability. And the Spain they remind me of is not the Spain, the golden era under Vicente del Bosque and Luis Aragonés. They remind me of the Spain before that. Do you remember in the era when Spain were everyone's dark horses and they played the nicest football, and yet they get done by somebody? This is the Spain I think we've got now, because they're not quite there. Obviously, Gavi and Pedri, I think those are the nascent superstars you're referring to, possibly Ansu Fati. There's a few others, of course. But Morocco could fancy this, funny enough, one of the things about World Cups is that certain players who don't necessarily shine for their club, and in the case of Ziyech, I know that I know well that he was very close to joining AC Milan in the summer. Not offer the money to get him. They were quite happy to let him go. He's a player that Chelsea have not seen the best of. But when these players play for the country, they really turn it on. And I do think this is an interesting fixture. If Japan can beat Spain, I don't see why Morocco couldn't. That's another factor as well.
Conor, for everything that's questionable and morally wrong about this World Cup, while it is in this part of the world, in the Arab world, there is part of most people, I think, who would probably like to see an Arab nation make it into the quarterfinals. They've got arguably the best support at the tournament. Like their matches outside of Argentina, their matches have been absolutely the most topping. So that, and the fact, like, if the line is we're here to grow the game, we're here to grow the game, well, a absolutely football mental like country like Morocco making the quarterfinals would maybe be a tangible outcome.
Yeah, I mean, it would provide a bit of color and sort of disruption to a quarterfinal lineup, which is looking quite predictable at this point. I mean, we're not going to have, unless Morocco win, we won't really have a surprise quarterfinalist, you could say. I mean, Portugal or Switzerland.
No, it's basically how you would draw your bracket if you're going with form at the moment. Yeah, so you do kind of.
Yeah, the Swiss are no one's ideas of romantic underdogs. Let's be fair here. Morocco would add a dash of that into it, and there's a real chance there. I would have suggested more based on Morocco's form than Spain's form, given that they were so fantastic against Belgium. Really, they overwhelmed them, and obviously there was questions over the Belgians together and their sort of mood at the time. But Morocco really exploited that, and it was a cracking second half performance. And as you said, the explosion of joy from the stand was really palpable. And this feels like their World Cup more than anyone else's, nearly. Of all, apart from maybe Japan, Croatia, this is the game you might have earmarked for a shock. I mean, Spain, they looked like world beaters against Costa Rica. They've sort of it's curdled a bit since then, and as John said, I kind of was flicking between obviously Japan and Spain and Germany, Costa Rica, and there was a sense there that Spain, they had all the ball for the last 25 minutes, but there was remarkably little penetration. It went back to the old complaint about them for much of the Euros last year, until they played very well against Italy in the semi-final, that there was this kind of slightly lateral sedate passing game where didn't really seem to go anywhere. Now, there was a question mark over how interested Spain were in scoring late in the game, particularly when it became apparent the Germans were going to win after all. I don't know, was there a brief burst of panic when Costa Rica went ahead? I think Luis Enrique said he didn't even know that they were out at one point. But yeah, so in that sense, Spain are not overly intimidating opponents this time around. Don't think they're back to the 2008-2012 era. Who knows?
Might be building to it.
They could be building to it, but this could be. It'll be an interesting, given Morocco's form. This could be the one that we get an outlier in the final.
It would be remiss of us, John, to not ask you how all is going in Blighty after a
Okay.
very impressive second round performance. Probably tempered by two things. Firstly, the performance of Kylian Mbappe in the other second round game, and
Yes.
secondly, the news of Raheem Sterling, which I think has probably taken the gloss off it for quite a lot of people.
Yes, the Raheem Sterling one. Well, that is a story that again, I keep using this phrase. No one's really got to the bottom of. Seems to be sort of slightly mixed reporting over that. For initial reports, there was a home invasion. Surrey police say it was a simple burglary. The question is whether Raheem Sterling returned to the camp. I don't know what the answer to that question. Now, I think last time I was with you, which was a couple of weeks ago, which feels like either yesterday or 4 years. I'm not really sure which. We were just coming off the Iran game, hype very high, and then we had an oscillation to the USA game, which was, oh, this is England. And then the Wales game restored some optimism. And then we're back up at that point. And I suppose the catalyst, the indicator of that is Jude Bellingham. At this point, the Jude Bellingham thing, we're into Michael Owen 1998. We're into Wayne Rooney 2004. We're at that hype level. I must say,
Gaza 1990 even. Not quite.
well, do you know what? Funny enough, I don't think, and I am old enough to recall, Gaza in 1990, the hype was not quite that level. And I think the tears were what made Gaza's reputation. He did play very well against the Netherlands. Funny enough, I did a piece for the weekend for the Observer about the Cameroon game where he was actually rubbish. And yeah, he played well against West Germany. Gaza's thing was more personal. I mean, he was a brilliant player. There's no doubt about that, of course. And it was, I think we may be underrated the fact that we had an Englishman that could play as well as Lothar Matthäus or whatever. But
it was retrospective. Is that what you're saying?
I think so, slightly. Yes, yeah. I mean, people were surprised how good he was, even though he'd been a good player.
He was a character as much as a footballer.
Yeah. And whereas with and also Gascoigne was 23, I think, at the time, so a little bit older than the Rooney. He wasn't a teenager, and that's the thing. We get very excited over this. And the thing is, Bellingham is a slightly different player to that sort of explosion, that explosiveness that we had from Owen and Rooney, where it's like, he's so good, he's so young. Whereas Bellingham looks like, unless things go wrong, and he always can, he could be this good for a long time. He just seems to have so much talent. Though weirdly enough, I was over. Well, one thing is, I checked this morning. His dad is the same age as me, so that's a sobering thought. But we I don't know. I just think I think we're very excited to have that type of player, the type of player that would fit into any of the. We talked about Brazil's no midfield. Even Neymar would perhaps consider that he might deign to Bellingham playing like that. He's just such a talented player, and then Harry Maguire had a slight wobble in that game, I would say, against Senegal, and then got there. But it was so easy. We don't really know how good England are yet. But one thing is, we've become good at tournament football, and Gareth Southgate's tournament record is much better than any other England manager at this point. So yeah, getting excited. But France, what? Okay, you chaps, tell me what you think of France. There's a
Conor, France. I think they're being kind of pinned as this one-man team, which I think is a tad unfair.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've mentioned it here before that they don't have the squad that they had 4 years ago because they've been absolutely decimated by injury, which is a problem. But I think he's not as good as Jude Bellingham, but I do think that Rabiot is an excellent holding midfielder.
Actually, Rabiot has played superbly now.
Yeah, so I do think they are a team. But I do think that you can be a good team and still be overshadowed by having one insanely talented, confident force of nature in your team, and they do have that.
Actually, I thought Mbappe was reasonably subdued for most of the Poland game. It was only it was only after he scored his first goal that he kind of took
Well, he
off.
did set up the first one as well.
That's true. That's true.
So he's 2 goals and an assist.
I was still underwhelmed.
Conor has very high standards, John.
Oh yeah,
actually, I think France generally. I mean, you were minded to kind of think, well, you know, the last title defense they had was terrible, and they have a load of players out. Paul Pogba's gone, Kante's gone, Benzema's gone. Now, I heard someone suggest Benzema's absence, given that he has very poor relations with Giroud. I believe he may have said stuff about him, and that might be improving the harmony of the team. The team might function better with him not there, oddly enough, even though he's the Ballon d'Or winner. So France they're playing superbly. I mean, I think aside from Mbappe, I mean, I think Griezmann has been fantastic. Rabiot, you said, just looked very, very good, very solid there. I mean, the overall, they're a bit more. I find them a bit better to watch than England. They're a bit slicker. They're a bit more able to. A lot of England's goals have arisen via counter-attacks, whereas I think France are more able to create just from off the hoof. Now, I know a lot of goals are scored via counter-attacks now, and the whole thing is rapid movement these days. But I think France they're a bit more electric going forward. That being said, I think there's a cavalier streak in France, which we saw in the Euros, as I've noted. And I think, you know, in a one-off game, it wouldn't be at all shocking if England took them out.
Talking of Griezmann, he's got that Neymar midfield role, hasn't he? That yeah. I mean, this is it. You know, star forwards are suddenly dropping like Pirlo did. I think Philippe Auclair compared it to that. Yeah, I suppose with all these teams, you've got to fit your players in somehow, haven't you? And that appears to be. I mean, Deschamps, you know, he's been around. Again, it feels like forever. I mean, since Euro 2016.
I think he was there in 14.
He was there in 14. You're absolutely right. Yeah, didn't. You know, I mean, then that was when Pogba made his breakthrough. They've always had good players, and you know, they obviously won it last time. And would you think that France have sort of underwhelmed despite only winning one World Cup? In that sense, because the talent they've had, and Mbappe, we could obviously end up with Mbappe having won 2 World Cups by the age of 23. He is, I would suggest, the outstanding player at this World Cup. You know, setting aside Messi, and a couple of others. You know, he has something that the rest of that speed, and also. That self-belief as well, I think, that he's got is something that I think very few other players haven't. He does seem to get on with Olivier Giroud. Now, those of us that reported on the Premier League 10 years ago, when Giroud arrived in English football, the fact that he is now France's record goal scorer, we could laugh and joke about him doing a Givache back in 2018, but he was a key player. He is a very good player. You know, the big man, the big striker. We talked about Switzerland before, Umbolo. You know, those players are coming back in a bit, aren't they? Croatia have got a couple like that. Though you would suggest that England's central defenders are used to playing against a player like Giroud, though he was a good Premier League player, though really underused towards the end of his time at Arsenal and Chelsea. Mm-hmm. One of those players that you might say, you know, has been a better international football at a certain part of his career than he has as a club player, though he's also been excellent for AC Milan. So yeah, excellent player. And you know, and again, the stat I heard was that I think Griezmann has played the last 72 internationals for France. Incredible.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
You could liken Giroud to an international record goal scorer who also kind of plays that role of, you know, the way a lot of thoroughbred racehorses, like they befriend goats or donkeys that kind of stay in their stable with them.
Yeah.
He kind of plays that role with Mbappe. He's there scoring goals, but he's also keeping Mbappe very happy, which is obviously a key thing to do. Like he's got two tasks there. He's like Mbappe's like kind of spirit animal, and he's also, you know, leading the line, which is
I mean, for someone who is so good looking, he seems to have not much of an ego as well. I mean, it's Some people are just too good at stuff, aren't they? It's annoying.
I know he's long annoyed me, that handsome bastard. To be honest with you. On that note, before I end up libeling or slandering Olivier Giroud out of jealousy, I think we better leave it at that. Obviously, you can watch
You didn't
Morocco.
pin John down on a prediction on whether England would beat France. No,
Oh, I didn't, did I? Obviously,
not
John's
in that game. That's a
win.
bit vulgar. That's a bit.
Do,
Go
do,
on, John.
what, do you want? Okay,
isn't it?
you want me to? Okay, you want me to make a prediction? Yes, England will beat France. I say that with my what was it? What was the phrase you used to describe me? John Bull.
John Bull, yeah, that's
John
it.
Bull. Yeah, with my.
That's it. That's why we got you on, John. That's why we got you on.
Well known as a John Bull character. You asked me on for my sheer patriotism. Yeah, I there are questions to be asked about that French team, though they are very experienced, but so are the English team. England have it within them to beat them. I think they have the better players, and I say that when they have Mbappe. But stop Mbappe, is that the job done? Not really, but it's a start, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. Conor, who's going to win then? Seeing as you were so
From
keen.
John Bull's other island, I will. I have a hunch England will win, but I wouldn't like to be. I mean, yeah, I'll go with England. Yeah, just about.
Okay, I think France is going to win because
It'll be.
Olivier Giroud is so dreamy.
It feels like a great event, I have to say.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah. I think actually, as good as the group stage has been, the second round hasn't provided that event game just yet, has it? And we've got 2 matches to go, of course, but we need that sort of set piece. And before I speak to a lot of journalists that are out there at the moment, and this thing always amuses me is that they all want the big teams to go through, no matter how bad they are. So a lot of them are annoyed that Germany didn't go through, when Germany been absolute rubbish for ages. And so, there's us. We want Morocco to go through for the health and wealth of the region. Yeah, cynical hacks just want England, France every week, don't they?
So what you're saying is, on Saturday, whoever wins, football will be the real winner. That's
absolutely, it always is.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you, Conor. Watch Morocco, Spain, and Portugal, Switzerland on RT2 and the RT Player tomorrow. And Raf will be back with you here tomorrow for another podcast. So thank you very much. Good luck. Chat to you later.